once you read and you keep reading, you understand like the world around you.
What B Stories is trying to do is trying to imagine a different St. Louis where we're living all together.
It's a book about a little girl who goes on a journey to understand the importance of saving.
Today on Spotlight, a look at literature in St. Louis. We'll take you to a bookstore dedicated to African American children. Plus, using storytelling to bring about change and be more inclusive. And then, a U-City board member writes a book teaching kids to save money. But first, a secret romance between enemies. It's Sunday, and you're watching Spotlight.
So here's a question. Which of the Allied countries in World War II, in desperate need of nurses, turned away thousands of qualified, patriotic volunteers simply because of their race?
Society at large didn't want to see black women in uniform. So a very small number actually served.
And Elinor Powell was one of them. Like many black nurses in World War II, instead of tending to the wounds of their countrymen, they were assigned to care for German prisoners of war being held in the United States. The Army theorized German soldiers who had been fighting on behalf of a racist regime would not become attracted to women of color. Apparently, Frederick Albert missed the memo. How did they meet?
It's a great story, really. So apparently, Frederick, his assignment was to work in the mess hall because he was a great cook and an excellent baker. And this is what he shared with his children and his and other family members. He said he saw her when she walked in, and it's like he was under a spell.
Frederick and Elinor became enemies in love.
I think it was youthful rebellion. I think they also were madly in love. But they were taking major risks. I mean, here you are, have an American nurse in the Army, and he's in Hitler's army. So we are enemies at war. So she could have been court-martialed had their romance been discovered.
But now their story has been discovered by journalist Alexis Clark, who spent years documenting this incredible story of courage in a time of war and marriage in a time of hate.
It's a collision of Jim Crow and Nazism. Even though we're at war, these are two countries that have racialized laws. So they both were committing crimes. So you really think about, wow, they erased all of that. And so I think, yes, it was, they're young, they're rebellious, but they also hated what their countries were putting forth and selling this racism, because that's not what were in their hearts either.
And there probably weren't too many people who had the same experiences, background, attitudes in the Army. The fact that they would find each other is pretty amazing.
I think so too, because they really weren't ever supposed to be with each other when you think about that time period.
Well, really, it's called enemies in love, but they weren't on that level enemies at all. It seems like the enemies were their own countrymen and women.
I agree. Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Do you think if they would have met somehow later in life, older, they would have gone ahead and gotten together, or was this sort of a moment of youth?
I think youth was on their side for sure. And not that you're young, that you're not thoughtful, but I do think there is something, there is more wisdom and more fear as you get older. You know what this world can be like. So I think it helped them that they hadn't experienced that much of life yet.
Well, the book is Enemies in Love, and it's terrific. And Alexis Clark, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. A profound feeling overcame Frederick when he spotted a beautiful, tall black woman. Incapable of concentrating on his kitchen duties, Frederick bypassed the POW waiters and walked right up to Elinor. He looked her in the eyes, smiled, and said with a German accent, "You should know my name. I'm the man who is going to marry you."
They are the best-selling authors and all of your favorite genres. For in-depth, one-on-one interviews, go to hecmedia.org.
Follow HEC Media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
All the time Mama was cornrowing my hair, Nisi kept calling me and waving her arms around, trying to make me look at her. After a while,
Despite
I got
opening in this
tired.
age of e-readers, audiobooks, and online shopping, a small bookstore in U City is changing young lives, one story at a time. I See Me African American Children's Bookstore is certainly unique in our city and is having an impact that all started with Jeffrey and Pamela Blair's deepest hopes for their own children.
We always felt that we were the ultimate educators for our children. We wanted to really make sure that our children had a firm understanding about their identity and about their history. And when they're in school or even, on the internet or wherever it may be that we may go to get information, it usually started with slavery and ended with civil rights. So we would talk about historical events, the Ottoman Empire or something like that, and they would be like, well, where were we during that time? And a lot of times, well, I'm not sure. And so it caused us to do some homework, and then when we found information, we had to put it in a child-friendly way. My wife actually writing a couple books, created a couple games as well. And so having that foundation about who they are, a firm positive belief and image in their own mind about themselves and their self-reflection about them and their people, it allowed them to be self-motivated about learning. Teachers, parents sort of saw, their achievements. They said, well, how'd you do that? And so we shared it with friends and family, and eventually, it grew into a business. We wanted to really let some of the successes that we've had with our own children and for our friends and family, for the community, because there's definitely a gap there that we want to fill.
For many African American children and families, I See Me is the oasis that they never fully realized they were searching for.
I actually took Sydney on a surprise visit to I See Me. I heard about it from a friend, and I said, okay, let's go try this out because we've never seen a store solely for African American children. And so I was excited to even have that experience with him. But once we got there, it was much more than what we expected. It was a lot of love just from the staff, and the books were amazing. There were even books there for me as a parent.
I liked to read before I went to I See Me, but it took it to a whole nother level because I've never seen anything like that before. And it just made me want to read more than I did. So then my reading went up a lot right after that.
As she watched her son have such an overwhelmingly positive reaction, Winnie pulled out her phone and recorded a live video for Facebook.
That went viral. Him reading a book and being captivated by the store went viral.
We said, okay, we need to keep up this momentum. People clearly are excited about this bookstore and they're excited about my son, being excited about reading. How can we, build both of those? And so we met with I See Me. I talked to Sydney, and from that he came up with Books and Bros.
Books and Bros is a reading club for boys between 8 and 12 years old. This is the time in life when, statistically, many African American males stop reading. Sydney's goal for the club is to encourage literacy and friendship. Presenting and fostering a respect for positive male role models is another important aspect of their meetings, with time built in for guest speakers to talk about their careers and answer questions. The club is open to any race and focuses on reading and discussing African American literature and history. Many members of Books and Bros are experiencing through the club what Sydney did on his first visit to I See Me.
To me, I think that reading is important. It's fundamental. Once you read and you keep reading, you will understand more. You understand the world around you, especially if you read nonfiction books.
Jabari Coleman was initially drawn into the club by the fun games the Bros play during their meetings, but soon discovered a love for books about history.
Because of how strong these people were and how much these people went through.
Now we're getting calls from all over the country, about wanting to really support what's going on and even duplicate it in other places. And that's just from one, that's Sydney. So imagine all the others that we can help cultivate.
Go to hecmedia.org for the arts and authors,
Completely accidental because I never set out to write a book.
culture and community,
It's considered to be the oldest organic farm west of the Mississippi.
science,
I'm wearing 3D glasses, operating on a high-definition screen.
and history.
I was really blown away by the strategy that was used through the Underground Railroad.
Education.
I look forward to the day when they graduate high school. I want to be a part of that.
Films.
It's a long cost penny.
Finding the coin places the site firmly in the 13th century.
What's happening now around St. Louis and more.
This is powerful, seeing my mother's story being told.
Search all of HEC Media's award-winning content. HEC Media has earned the Mid-America Emmy Award for Overall Excellence 4 times. See for yourself at hecmedia.org.
Taking a look at literature with Spotlight.
The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go.
For the participants of We Stories, a book is so much more than a good story.
The mission of We Stories is to help families start and strengthen conversations about racism and show up differently. Families, when they enroll with us, they receive 4 diverse children's books per child. Those books are intended to help families get started a conversation about skin color and racial difference.
I think what We Stories is trying to do is trying to imagine a different St. Louis, imagining what a community would look like where we're living all together.
It's given us just a different lens on how we approach what we're teaching our kids and what we're putting in front of our kids. And that's really, I think, guided us into other areas where we've talked about where does race fit into these other things that we're putting in front of our kids.
I've got big hair and I don't care. And even though the kids may stare, I lift my hands up in the air. I smile and say, I love my hair.
Based on child development research about how racial bias forms in children, We Stories formed in 2015.
By age 7, we see that white children show a lot more bias than their peers who are children of color. And what's shocking and surprising to most caregivers is it actually doesn't correlate with the parents' views about race. It correlates to whether or not they talk to their children about race. So what that means is for many white families who believe they have very tolerant views, but don't actually have a habit of ever addressing race because they don't think kids notice it, or they wait till kids say something to respond, are missing this important socialization practice and window.
Families who participate with We Stories come from all over St. Louis. However,
it's very clear there's some pretty distinct patterns that differ between white families and families of color. The majority of the families who participate in our program are white. And we think that's a really good thing because it creates an opportunity to have deep and meaningful conversations about race in a place where it often doesn't happen.
And something that I really value and want to focus on as a parent is helping my children understand and see other people and be able to walk a mile in their shoes. In order to be part of any solution or any movement forward, we have to acknowledge that it's there and take advantage of the privilege we have to be part of the solution.
families are often surprised at how much they take away from their experience with We Stories.
We often say to the parents is give yourself license to learn. Like, let this be about you as much as the kids. And what we hear back is that that's exactly what happens for folks, is they think they're signing up because this will be a good thing for their kids. They are happily surprised by how important it becomes for them. One of my favorite phrases that's come out of our parent community is they say, come for the book, stay for the community.
For me, We Stories has been a point of connection and of community. I've connected with people that I probably wouldn't have connected with otherwise because I know they're passionate about similar things. I think that We Stories is a space that has allowed me to show up with my full self.
Cats in the rain, cats.
We Stories believes that storytelling and community will be the catalyst for change.
I hope that our kids have an opportunity to be in this community and have people around them that look different from them, that they have really authentic relationships with, and that they can learn and grow together.
At the end of the day, what moves us to make change are the relationships that we have and the stories that we know. So when we're able to expand either of those, a lot more becomes possible. And that's basically what We Stories is all about.
HEC Media presents Talking with Authors, the podcast. Your favorite writers and genres, with diverse subjects and styles, with new podcasts dropping bi-weekly. Subscribe to Talking with Authors wherever you get your podcasts.
Taking a look at literature in St. Louis with Spotlight.
For many children, piggy banks are their first foray into financial savings. But not all parents are comfortable talking about money, let alone with their children. And former St. Louis City grade school teacher Chelsea Addison wants to change that. She's always taught outside the box and the classroom, often taking her students outside for their lesson. She realized there was a need to educate kids about money after one of her students confided in her.
She talked about how her sister had lost her job because she couldn't count the money at the register.
Chelsea decided that could be a good teaching moment for her then second grade students.
I didn't really find any material that was rigorous enough, that I felt was reflective of the demographic that I was teaching, and so I wanted to create a resource for not only students but for teachers and for parents that could facilitate this conversation around money.
So she penned Savannah's Savings Jar, the first in a collection of 6 books about kids and finance.
It's a book about a little girl who goes on a journey to understand the importance of saving. And along that way, she starts a business and realizes that some of the decisions that she makes can impact how the success of her business. Not only that, but the people that she's around, how that can have an impact on her financial behavior.
Chelsea no longer teaches now that she's pursuing a PhD, but remains a mentor to several former students and their sisters.
What I was able to do and the relationships that I still have with the parents and the students are incomparable.
Miss Addison classes were very fun because she was one of those teachers that had a lot of joy.
So it says, what do you know about saving money? The questions are, what do you know about starting your own business? What are expenses? Do you save your money? What is a budget and what is a financial goal?
I think it's good that she's making a book for kids so young at the age of 10 because they need to know at this age, like, money is no joke and it's not a game, and you need to know, like, how to save it and how it should be working, how money actually works.
Chelsea consulted on the psyche of money. She learned that a lot of what we know and understand has to do with our environment growing up.
For instance, in the book it talks about Savannah needing to save at least 25% of her money. That was something that my mom told me. Kids will soak it up immediately. They'll say, oh, I got a dime. Let me go put this in my savings jar. Let me put this in my shoebox so that I can save it for later. It all started 2 weeks ago when my teacher, Senora Romero, excitedly announced Class A. We were awarded a grant from Financial Friends.
A lover of languages, Chelsea incorporates Spanish into the book and introduces characters of different backgrounds.
Money is not exclusive to race, it's not exclusive to your economic status. Everyone touches money, and so I didn't want to create a space where only one group of people felt like they identified with it, because that's not the reality of finances.
The collection of books is not just for kids. Chelsea hopes to reach and teach parents as well.
Creating a space for the parents to have those types of conversations with more ease with the students was important.
And what have the kids learned?
You gotta save money up, and once you get to the goal, you gotta put that on important things.
If you want something versus you need something, the money's gonna have to go towards what you need.
Meantime, the Atlanta transplant is giving back to the community by getting elected to the University City School Board.
I wanted to understand from a higher perspective of what makes the difference in a child's life from a policy perspective and from a systemic level, because so many people had a problem with the system of education.
Chelsea published Savannah's Savings Jar through her own media company. U.S. Bank has purchased books for the St. Louis Library.
To write about a topic that is so important not only to me but to so many different people made my life so much more fuller.
You can find out more about Chelsea and her Financial Friends Foundation at financialfriendsbook.com and on Facebook at Financial Friends Foundation.
Happening now. There are 5 new exhibits you can enjoy at the Bruno David Gallery in Clayton through February 22nd. And things look a little sweeter at the Centene Center for the Arts. See this full story and more at hecmedia.org. Plus, All Colors returns to the St. Louis Artists Guild through February 29th. Here's more.
We're at the St. Louis Artists Guild presenting Portfolio Gallery's annual All Colors exhibit. We want to, through this exhibit, present art that is thought-provoking and allows for you to build and help us help others. It's an annual exhibit that we present each year designed to raise funds so that we as a not-for-profit arts organization can then give that back to small not-for-profit arts organizations, community-based organizations, and student artists of all disciplines.
The Arts Guild have been very gracious and very supportive and very generous in housing and hosting this exhibit for the second time. This is one of the most unique and encouraging and educational exhibit that I've been involved in a long time. I think it's something that fulfills the mission of Portfolio, that is to enrich lives and to educate people and to bring artists, especially those artists who may not be known, to the St. Louis area, and to try to give people a flavor of what art is in the lives of African American people.
You get to see some of the best art in the country. Maybe we even go to the world, because we have Robert Hill, who is from a little Providence right outside Paris, France. We have Sandra Smith out of Silver Springs, Maryland. Charles Bibbs out of Riverside, California. Lonnie Powell out of Lee's Summit, Missouri. There are artists from all around places that you would say, wow, I never heard of Adrian Patel. I never heard of Anthony High. I never heard of Manuelita Brown. This is a place to discover artists, to add to your collection. This is the new frontier.
On stage this week in St. Louis, Stiefel Theater will host a nationwide touring version of the Tony Award-winning Gershwin classic, An American in Paris. Stray Dog Theater brings the semi-autobiographical Edward Albee play Three Tall Women to their stage in Tower Grove. Metro Theater Company mounts a world premiere of an award-winning book for young readers, Ghost. St. Louis Actors Studio has the 2-person play Annapurna ready for its audience. Reviews for these shows and more at hecmedia.org.
At Parkway's Mason Ridge Elementary School, Miss Elaine, as she is known, is not much taller than the kids she has come to tutor, but she is a little bit older.
I'll be 90 in December. Come into the sacred garden with me. Morning.
Oh my gosh, we are so lucky to have Miss Elaine at Mason Ridge. I couldn't have asked for a better situation.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Miss Elaine, spelled E.Lane, has been part of the Oasis Institute's volunteer tutoring program for over 20 years.
Way to go.
She also spent 40 years working in Montessori education, so she knows what to do and she knows what not to do.
A lot of the children are not heard. Nobody listens to them. That's why I ask them, what do you see in the picture? I won't give you the answer, I'll give you a hint. Let your brain take a picture of it. The only thing I can teach you is that as a child, you have the ability to learn. That's all. You can pull my chair out first.
Miss Elaine's lessons include more than just the basics.
This is my friend Amanda, and this is my friend Clara. This is your right hand.
Hi, Clara. It's nice to meet you.
In addition to the academics, she teaches them life skills So it's important that you greet her with a handshake, and she teaches them how to communicate through, saying good morning. How are you today?
And it's nice to see you. Children do not come out of the womb knowing how to be polite. Someone has to teach them. Now, whether they do it or not, that's their choice. But can I fault them if they don't do it, if I haven't taught them? You show me how you make a D.
You might think by giving her lessons so conspicuously, the kids she works with might get teased by the kids she doesn't. But they don't.
From the very first year that I started, every year, the other children in that class go to their teacher and they say, when is it going to be my turn to work with Miss Elaine? Why doesn't she choose me to work with? So I'm going to read you a story today about butterfly.
It was simply a reading lesson, but learning about how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly also seems like a perfect analogy for what Miss Elaine is trying to do with these kids. But since she considers this the sacred garden, she prefers a different comparison.
I don't know what that color is called.
It's kind of like planting a seed, and then the elements of the soil and the sun and everything that seed is going to be is already in the seed, and I'm just coaxing it to come out rather than telling them what I think they should be or do.
Bats. I like seeing her. It's like something that I love.
You don't have to be an astronaut or a neurosurgeon. If you're being the best you can be, and you're a good person, and you're considerate of other people, you're a winner in my book.
After each visit, Miss Elaine writes that book, giving teachers an evaluation of the progress her students are making and the challenges they continue to face.
It's an S, and what sound do we make for the S? Okay.
Like snake.
Oh, that's a good one.
The growth that happens in Miss Elaine's sacred garden is not just because hers is a classroom of one. It's also because, as a teacher, Miss Elaine is in a class all by herself.
It confirms for me that I am aligned with what God designed me to do. I just have a feeling that this is what's been given to me to give back. It's not for me, it's to invite them to be who they are.
Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us again next Sunday at 9:30 a.m.